Alright guys, today what I wanted to talk about is something that I briefly mentioned in a previous video, which is why I decided to use the 9mm cartridge, excuse me, why I decided to use a 9mm cartridge as my cartridge of choice for a sidearm or for a handgun. Now what I have set on the table here, I've got 4 different pistols. As you can see, I'm going to pan just a little bit because I couldn't get them all quite in the frame. So I've got 4 different handguns on the table here, and I'll go through and I'm going to talk about why I chose a 9mm over something a little bit larger like say the 45. I'm just focusing on 9mm and 45. I'm not really getting into any other of the intermediate cartridges for handguns like 40 caliber or 357 SIG or anything like that. And we're not talking about any Magnum calibers because I don't believe that a revolver should be used as a primary sidearm. Personal. That's just a personal preference of mine. And part of that you'll hear my reasonings why. So over here I have 2 9mm. Right here I've got a Beretta M9 2F, and right next to it I have my actual primary sidearm, which I have chosen to use, and that's a Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm. And as you see there, I've got a Surefire X300 Ultra 500 lumen light attached to it. I'm going to pan back out just a hair. And so the reason why I chose a 9mm, actually before I get into that, I'll pan over and I'll show you the other 2 weapons that I have on the table here. So right here we have a 1911. Now please don't get me wrong, I am a huge fan of the 1911. I think it's a fantastic design, a wonderful pistol. But I'll talk about why I haven't chosen the 1911 as a primary sidearm. Now before I decided to use this, the M&P 9mm, I actually was using this, my 1911, and I actually had my entire rig, my entire kit set up for a 1911. I had the most amount of magazines for the 1911. The Surefire that you see right here actually used to be mounted to, let's see if I can get it to focus a little bit. So this Surefire right here actually used to be mounted to my 1911 on the accessory rail that you see underneath the barrel there. So, but I'll talk about why I switched over from the 1911 to the M&P in 9mm. And over here I've got another 45. That's a Heckler & Koch USP 45, and that handgun is huge. And mounted to it I have a Insight Technologies M6 laser and flashlight combo. Okay, so let me talk about why I decided to select the 9mm. The biggest reason I decided to select the 9mm over the 45, or actually switched from 45 to 9mm, is for mainly because of magazine capacity. And you know, there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to tell you, well, you know, it's a 45, so you don't need as many bullets, right? Because it's bigger, it does more damage, blah blah blah. You don't need as many rounds, so therefore it's not really necessary to have, you know, a 15-round magazine, or you know, a 12 or 13 or however many rounds most modern 9mm carry. The 45 guys are going to say 45s don't need that many bullets because, you know, 45's a man stopper and 9mm doesn't do anything. Whatever, it's a load of crap is what it is. Now talk to anybody who's ever been in an actual gunfight in their life, and they'll tell you 2 things. One, it's very easy to miss your target. I don't care how much training you had, you will miss. And 2, nobody's ever come out of a gunfight saying to themselves, man, I sure wish I would have carried less ammo. Sure wish my gun held less ammo after that gunfight. Nobody's ever going to say that. So the whole your gun doesn't need that many bullets if it's a 45 argument is a load of crap. So as a demonstration, I set out some magazines for these pistols. Now with the Beretta, this magazine you see here, this is a standard capacity Beretta magazine. Now let me just see if I can get that number in the frame right there on the bottom. I don't think it'll focus on it, but it says 15. So this standard capacity magazine holds 15 rounds. And this is a regular military issue magazine. Don't ask me where I got it. All you need to know is it's military issue. So this holds 15 rounds of 9mm. If you wanted to get crazy, if you wanted to just go a little overboard, this magazine here, that doesn't have the holes in the back, but you'll just have to take my word for it. You'll get an extra 5 out of this. So this is a 20-round magazine for a Beretta 9mm. So with this in the gun, that's what you get right there. You're actually going to be hanging out about 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches from the bottom of the gun. Taking this thing out and shooting it, I've done it many times with this magazine, and I'll tell you what, it's a lot of fun firing off 20 rounds before you have to reload. Now again, it all comes down to winning the gunfight, winning the battle. That's the only thing that's important. The size of the bullet you use to do it with doesn't really matter as long as you win. As long as at the end of the day you're the last one standing, that's the only thing that matters. Now coming over here to my carry pistol. Now this is the weapon I have chosen as my primary sidearm. Smith & Wesson M&P, full size, chambered in 9mm. Now I bought it in the communist state of California, unfortunately, so it came with 10-round magazines. But and those are actually, you know, low capacity magazines. But the standard capacity magazines that this pistol actually comes with in any other state or any of the free states here in the great United States would be 17 rounds. So that's a standard capacity magazine. Now what I mean by standard capacity, the size of the magazine, you know it's a standard capacity if it fits in the grip with no overhang. If the floor plate is actually flush with the bottom of the weapon like it's supposed to be, that's a standard capacity magazine. So for the Beretta, this 20-round magazine, which overhangs from the grip, is actually a high capacity magazine. So that's how you know with a handgun what's high capacity, what's standard capacity. So the 15-round magazine for this Beretta is actually a standard capacity magazine. The 20-round magazine would be the high capacity. So for this M&P, the standard capacity is 17 rounds. Again, nobody walks away from a gunfight saying, man, I sure wish my gun had less bullets in it. So now, let's take a look at these two 45s. Now please don't get me wrong, I think the 45 is a great cartridge. I really do. I'm not here to badmouth 45 caliber or anyone who uses 45 caliber. If you have selected 45 caliber as your primary weapon system, your primary sidearm, by all means, please be proficient with it. And as long as you can win the fight, I don't really care what you use. If you decide to use a slingshot, as long as you can win the fight with a slingshot, do it. More power to you. So don't think that I'm here just to bash the 45 caliber, because I'm really, really not. Because again, I had selected the 45 first before I decided to switch to 9mm. And I think the main reason why I selected the 45 first is because here in America, you know, bigger is better. We like everything huge. We like big giant trucks. We like big giant well, no, not big giant women. That's just kind of weird. But you know, you get the point. So my patriotic instinct was to just go with the bigger one. So I decided 45. I'm getting 45. Then I kind of did some thinking on it. Stopped to think about it a little bit and decided, you know what? I think I'd be better off using the 9mm. So with this 1911, which is a single stack magazine, the standard capacity, and what I have here are Wilson Combat magazines. Wilson Combat makes some of the best magazines for 1911s on the market. So if you do own a 1911 and you're watching this and you're looking to get some new magazines, I would highly suggest Wilson Combat. WilsonCombat.com, they're reasonably priced, and you can't go wrong with their magazines. They make the best 1911 magazines on the market. But so let's take a look at this. If you can see that number there, you see an 8. That's the standard capacity for a 1911. And for some magazine manufacturers, their standard capacity is actually 7. But with these, with the Wilsons, you get 8. So 8 rounds of 45. Even with this is an extended magazine, similar to the one I showed earlier with the Beretta. Now I'll show you what it looks like inside the gun. So, similar to the Beretta, you've got the overhang, right? About 1.5 inches to 2 inches of overhang out the bottom of the grip. With the Beretta, the high capacity magazine was 20 rounds. With the 1911, it's half that. You're at 10 rounds. And that's with an extended magazine. You're only getting 10 rounds. Hopefully you're starting to see my point. So, let's move on to the next handgun. Now here, we've got Heckler & Koch USP-45. Heckler & Koch is an amazing manufacturer. They make some of the best guns in the world. A little overpriced in my personal opinion. I think that's just because they're German, and Germans are very proud of everything they do, no matter what. But they do make fantastic weapon systems, vis-a-vis the MP5, the HK416, the HK417, the PRS-1 sniper rifle. I mean, they make some very well-made combat weapons that are prolific around the world. The MP7, fantastic weapon. I'd love to get my hands on one of those. But again, I live in California, so good luck with that. So I digress. Moving back to the 45 caliber USP. Now the USP model does come in all major pistol calibers: 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP, and I believe 357 SIG as well. So, but I bought the 45, and why? Again, it goes back to my American ego, my American I love everything huge. That part of me just said, got to get the 45, right? It's a USP, got to go 45 on this thing. If I'm going to spend $1,000 on a handgun, and I spend about $1,000 on this handgun, might as well go with the biggest one they got, get the 45. And when I say big, I mean big. This is a really big pistol. This thing is huge. Fills up your entire hand, and I am not a small man by any means. I am just shy of 6'4", about 190 pounds, and this thing just fills up my entire hand. Now, unlike the 1911 that I just showed, which I said was a single stack magazine, this is actually a staggered stack magazine. Or the layman's terms would be a double stack magazine. It's not actually double stacked, it's staggered stacked. And I can explain that later. But look how thick the magazine is. Look how wide it is. And that's so you can stagger those giant 45 ACP rounds. Which means the grip of the pistol has to be big enough to fit this thing, which means your hand has to be big enough to fit on the grip. It's a really big gun. And again, see if I can get that number in there. That's a 10. Standard capacity, 10 rounds. As of yet, I have never seen a high capacity magazine for a USP. So even if they did have one, it would probably only be 12. Probably be about 12 rounds. So you're looking at a 10 round magazine that's this large, and that's the standard capacity. Now, whatever sidearm you carry, you got to carry it in a holster. So depending on the size of the weapon, that's going to determine the size of your holster. So if you got a big giant gun like a USP, you're going to have a big old giant holster to carry the thing around in. Your ammunition, if you're carrying it on a belt, or if you're carrying it on some type of chest rig or a plate carrier or something of that nature, 45 ACP rounds are heavier than 9mm rounds. Even though you're carrying less 45 ACP rounds than you would be carrying if you had a 9mm, the weight's probably going to even out just because 9mm rounds are smaller and they are lighter. But you can carry more of them for the same amount of weight cost. So, it's a weight to ammunition cost savings if you think about it that way. If you think about it economically, 10 rounds of 45 probably weighs about the same as 17 rounds. Now, I haven't actually pulled out a gram scale, and weighed them all, but you can probably guesstimate that 10 rounds of 45 ACP probably weighs close to 17 rounds of 9mm. So I'm sure the weight is probably pretty comparable. Now, that's something that somebody can do, and if you want to do those calculations, by all means, please post that up in the comments. I would love to see the results of that, just so I have that understanding of my own. So anyways, those are some basic reasons why I decided to choose the 9mm cartridge over the 45 ACP cartridge. Because again, it's all about winning the fight. That's the only thing that matters, is at the end of the fight, are you still standing? Are you victorious? Have you defeated your enemy? It's the only thing that matters. And please don't fall for this whole 45 caliber is a one and done type of gun. There's no such thing as a one and done any gun, okay? Not even rifles. So thinking of a handgun, any handgun caliber is one and done, except for maybe a Smith & Wesson 500 or a Smith & Wesson 460. That's just flawed thinking, and that's a good way to get yourself killed. So if you go into a gunfight with the mindset of all I got to do is pull the trigger once and this fight is over, you're going to get yourself killed, okay? Because people survive handgun wounds all the time. Every day somebody's getting shot with a handgun and they are surviving that wound, whether it be a 45, a 9mm, or a 40, it doesn't matter. Most handgun, pretty much all modern handgun rounds are underpowered, okay? They're not man stoppers, they're not fights. I mean, they're fight stoppers if you use enough of them, and that's why you need higher magazine capacity, because you need enough bullets to stop the fight. And don't think that that every fight you might get into, or any gunfight you ever find yourself into, is just going to be a one-on-one confrontation. You and one guy. He's got a gun, you got a gun, and you're both going to square off and see who wins. It might be you versus 6 guys. It might be you versus 2 or 3 guys. And some of them might be armed, some of them might not be. You're not going to know. So, again, please try and explain to me how less bullets is a better thing. I would love to see somebody post in the comments and give their argument on why less ammunition is a better solution than more. So again, that's why I chose a 9mm. Please post in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys have to think about this. I'd love to to read your thought processes, and we'll get a good discussion going about it. But again, the only thing that matters is you winning the fight. So pull the trigger as many times as necessary, and you want to have as many trigger pulls in between reloads as possible. So you might want to reconsider the 9mm cartridge. And with modern ammunition manufacturing processes, 9mm, the gap in ballistics between the 9mm and the 45 ACP has been greatly reduced, been greatly closed. There was a time where 9mm was pretty underpowered by comparison to the 45. Okay, but with modern hollow point technology, you know what I mean, plus P plus type ammunition, like I said, that gap in ballistics is being closed up. So the choice to go to 9mm to me was a sound choice, just because I prefer more bullets in my gun. And if I'm going to carry the weight, I'd rather carry more ammunition for the amount of weight I'm carrying. It just makes sense to me. I want to pull the trigger more times in between reloads, not less. 8 rounds in a gun really, to me, just is kind of unacceptable, unless you live in the state of New York, in which case 8 rounds in your gun will get you thrown in jail because you're one over the capacity limit, which is absolutely ridiculous, but that's a video for another time. So post in the comments, let's talk about it, and I'll leave you with these words. God bless you, the American patriot. God bless the United States, and long live the Republic.